Hi everybody, welcome back to Push and Paint, and here we are at the start of a new video. And what we're going to work on today is something with a bit more liveliness in it, still in the landscape category, but we're going to work on a nice mountain scene with just a very tranquil little river and a nice campfire on the edge of it. And the campfire is going to be our focal point. Everything else just kind of fades into the background. So what I've done here already is a nice little sky, if that'll focus and change. There we go. Nice little sky that's just that very dusky color. Just the last hints of sunset going down when it's getting dark and everything's taking on that blue tone. So our entire painting is going to have these purple and blue and very muted tones, mostly a green mixed with blue for our trees and things like that. We're going to work our way down to a campfire down here in the bottom, and that campfire is going to be that brilliant orange color that's going to light up the area, and we'll see what we can do as far as having it play off some rocks, and we'll get into the more details as far as how to paint those rocks and different things like that up close. So that's where we're at so far. You can see where we're going, and you can follow along with me. You can grab your paints, you can get going, and just make yourself a pretty little sky just like this. You've seen me do it at least a dozen times, so you know how to do that part. Alright, let's push some paint. Okay, so we're going to work on our mountain line in the background here. We're going to have a mountain kind of coming in like this and kind of coming in like this. This one's going to be a little bit more in the foreground. This one's going to be a little bit more in the background. So, for our background color, you can see I've got that set up there. This is a purple. It's a mix of the phthalo blue, the crimson, and a little bit of white. Okay? And a tiny bit of the black. I just want to gray that out just a bit. Okay, so we get that on our brush. We're not using a ton of paint, because what we're going to do is just kind of sketch this in, and we're going to draw the paint across the canvas after we sketch it in. So let's see here. We're going to come down just like so. We're just kind of putting this guy in here, and we can be okay if it starts to get a little lighter as we go towards our center point where there's a little bit more light. As we get towards the outside here, it's going to get a bit darker. Okay, so we put those in. There's no real detail on this back edge. Maybe some darker spots and some lighter spots, but really no kinds of details whatsoever. Okay? I'm just going to have this in here like so. Just this real, kind of bring it down. We take this paint and we just draw it down like so. Okay? And we work our way down, further down into our ground here. You can see that blue color really starts to stand out. Okay, if you don't like that, you can change it. You can add a bit of burnt sienna to it, or burnt umber, and that will brown that out and warm that color up. Okay, but I want this to sort of remain kind of misty in the background here. And what we're going to do towards the edge is darken this out. So I just added a tiny bit of our blue and our black mixed together. There we go. And I just want that to bleed into that color a little bit and just sort of give us that richness. Now there's going to be some trees here, so we don't need to draw this down too far. We kind of want this one to mist out. Okay? Just like so. Just like so. We can put a little peek in there. These are so far back in the background, guys. They're just going to fade away. you're not going to see them. I mean, you are going to see them, but what it's going to do is give your painting that depth. Okay? You're going to let it give you that background that you want. Okay? I say that a lot. I know, that's my favorite word. Okay. And we're just going to give ourselves some shadow here. Little bits of, a little bit more of the darker stuff. Again, keep this nice and light. And when we start adding in our foreground objects, this will all fade in the background as well, so that'll help it. Okay, we're going to come down here and we're going to add a little bit. This one's mostly going to be tree covered, but we'll add a little bit of our mountain here as well. A little bit of that red to it. It's going to give us some more depth to that color instead of just being so strong of a blue. You can bring that guy here. If you get too much paint on your brush, just dab the end with a shop towel. Take your shop towel, just give it a little wipe like that, and that will take the extra excess off of there. Okay, we're going to put that right up close. This guy's going to be a bit closer, but still kind of that purple, misty, mysterious kind of color. Okay, like so. We're going to have trees coming down all through this. We're going to have some nice, we're up north here for this one, so up north in the, who knows, the Rocky Mountains and the Canadian wilderness, I don't know, but imagine yourself somewhere like that. Okay, get those little brush hairs out of there. So we just kind of mist this down. We just kind of let it drift away into our foreground or our midground here. Alright, as we can go back to our tree lesson way back in the day that everybody seems to like so much, and we can put our tree line in larger strokes, and then we can define those trees with the small details. So let's hold that brush for a minute. Let's see. Let's bring these in. And we're going to put some trees just like that. Look at that distant tree line here. That's going to be our far shore here. We're going to bring this around. Anyhow, I'm not too concerned with it. And you can see there is a little bit of green in there. Now when I'm doing this, I edit it out, but you guys don't see the drying time here. If I want it to be completely dry, what I do is walk away from it for a few days, and I come back and my paints are tacky and ready to go. Okay, I want to get those details nice and small, so I'm just going to come in like this, like that, and we'll form that out with our detail brush. So we'll get some highlights on those trees, and then we'll work our way down. We'll keep going. What we're doing here is just putting the tops of these trees in. Using lots of little details, just because then later on it'll translate out. It'll make a prettier painting. What I found throughout my experiences is that these little details actually pay off. You know, there's some times where you might not want that much going on in your background because you don't want it to detract from your foreground, but I think once you get to a certain point, you start saying, okay, let's add a little bit more here. And that way it increases the richness of a painting, especially a landscape like this. You know, we're going to have all kinds of detail in the front, but never really any concrete subject. Our campfire here is going to be, you know, our main subject of the painting, if you will, but if you put enough work into the background, then the whole thing becomes a subject. So I hope you're following along with me, or if you're not, you're just enjoying the show. I hope you're at least enjoying the show. And thank everybody so far for liking and subscribing and commenting on the videos, giving me ideas, giving me commission requests. I know I have a lot of those, and I apologize to people that have been waiting a long time. Someday maybe that's what I'll be good at, but for now I just kind of have to paint what I feel, and if I can work in some requests in there and commission ideas, then I can. But plenty of times I just have a real tough time doing it. The last thing I'd like art to be is work, and a lot of times when you do commissions, it sometimes just feels like work. Little dabs and odds and ends. I hope I'm not getting in the shot too much. Nobody wants to see the side of my head. They want to see the painting take form. So I'm doing a little light coat here. Just a little bit of that lighter color, which is actually a mix. What I'm mixing here is sap green, even though since it's so close to dusk, it's going to be washed out, but I've got some sap green in there, so what that is my base, and then I've got the phthalo blue, which is a real deep blue color, and some burnt umber, which is how we take that phthalo blue and make it almost black. We mix it with burnt umber, and when you contrast that with your lighter colors on the painting, that's what you end up with, is almost a black without actually using black. And in landscapes you really should try and avoid it if you can. We'll tone that up with some shoreline here. That shoreline's all going to have that nice purple color mixed in with it. So we'll come back and we'll start to throw that in here. Just with our base first, and then we'll get to the details later. Okay guys, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how am I going to paint all these rocks? This whole shoreline is stones, river stones, river rocks, all different shapes, all different sizes, and what you have is a mixture of shadow and many different shades of gray and blue gray and really dark shadow. So I figure let's try our comma stroke, basically the same stroke that we do for leaves. Well, basically, I mean, it's exactly like it sounds. I've already got a base paint down, but this way we can sort of keep our colors random. Well, we'll sort of tail it off there. We'll kind of go into distant rocks there. That's our point there. But up here, we'll just all different sorts of angles and shadows. Not to mention that my lighting might look a little different because I realized halfway through my painting that I had the lights turned off. So I got the main light overhead, but that just kind of makes a big old shadow and glare on the canvas. So I turn my auxiliary lighting on, I guess, if you want to call it. So what we're doing here is we're going to make all these river rocks with different colors and shades, and hopefully, I mean, I can sit there and whoop, whoop, boom, 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 boom. Hopefully, I'll probably have to mix up some more of the dark stuff. We're going to put all the shadows in there first, and there's going to be the fire here, so I'm not too worried about it, but we'll get the shadows in there first before I start worrying about highlights. Anyway, big old rocks. So what we're doing here, as you can see, guys, I went ahead and spent lots of time on these little rocks here, and I let it dry for a little bit. But what I want to do here is just little glints of reflected firelight. Okay, and I'm very carefully just adding these. I know I haven't added the fire yet of its, in and of itself, so I'm not going too crazy. I just want to get that little I mixed up a color that I like, so I want to get that on there, and this just sort of accentuates some of these rocks, and don't have to put it in there too exact. I get little bits of paint on my brush, and that's all we're doing. We're just adding little highlights here and there, and just what this does is in this jumbled mess of color, it creates the edges of rocks and all these stones and pebbles that are down here. There's so many of it. We basically just, I mean, if you really look at the colors and at the painting here up close, it looks just like a jumbled mass of color. I mean, basically we put in a whole bunch of shadow and then went over it again and put in a whole bunch of highlights, and then I went over again and put in some shadow. And so what I'm doing here is further differentiating our rocks, and this will just accent a few edges. Okay, and this shows us, oh, there's actual definition in here. There's actual things in all this mass, and that's basically all we did with the highlights and the shadows. I made some highlights with my detail round brush. I'll probably go back and edge some of that out, but then I went through and made a really dark color with my phthalo blue and my alizarin crimson and burnt umber, and maybe a teeny bit of sap green just to sort of dull it out. all that together makes kind of a dark blue, almost black. And we use that for our shadows. If I do too much with this oil paint, that's the wonderful thing about oil paint. If I put a little bit too much paint on there, you see how I'm just sort of, hopefully you can see that, I'm just sort of scraping the surface of it. And I take the paint that I put on there and I spread that out. And that just gives me these different levels of it, instead of having this really strong. I'll illustrate it again. Let's say I put that, and that's too much. I don't want that on there. I want the general hint of that orange peach firelight, color. So I want to take that out. So I just very carefully hit it with that brush again and again and again, and just kind of scrape it away and blend that paint with the underlying paint and just kind of move it around. And then we end up with our firelight. So we've got we're going to make our logs for our fire. We're going to start with that. And these are going to be real dark, and then we're going to put highlights on them. So we're going to go with a bit of brown, a bit of blue. It's the same color, so you got my oil from my crimson dripping down there. We'll put a little bit of that. Oh, look at that. That's brand new out of the tube. Freshly opened tube, you end up with this little bit of oil on top. That's more burnt umber. I want this to be almost black. And put a bit of raw sienna in there. It's either burnt raw umber or raw sienna. I can't remember which, but you see we're at almost black there. I'm going to add a bit of green. That'll dull that out. Okay. Nice thick paint. Make that up with our palette knife. Make sure to get that palette knife right in the mineral spirits, and that way not getting any of that paint slick and dry on there. Put that back. Get them in the mineral spirits, and we wipe them down with our shop towel. And you got a nice clean palette knife, saved for lots of uses. Okay, I'm going to use our same brush here because I'm in small stuff territory. So this is a liner brush. It's a bit shorter, it's a bit beat up, because that way I can not care so much. This is new for me, guys, so bear with me here. It looks like what I think we're going to do here, if I pause and take a look at my reference photo. Let's see, here we go. So what do I want? Well, I want one, and we're going to use a lot of foreshortening. It's going to be one here. Boom. Like so. That one's going to be mostly brightened up. But you see how thin that goes on? Nice and thin, nice and easy. And that will dry within 24 hours. Almost. If not dry, it'll be tacky enough to work with. We're going to go big guy like so. Because what I'm going to do is get these on there and then put the highlights and the fire in over top of it. Now this is probably not the way you should do it, but it's the only way I can figure it out for me. It's what works for me. This way I get the structure of my fire down, so I know what boundaries I'm working with. Okay. This guy just sort of pokes straight back here, and he ends here. And sort of, you know, you see we're building our little fire pit here. And this guy comes down here over him. But I'm not being too exact. What I'm doing is just laying the foundation. Okay, so what I'm doing here is just starting out real light with our fire. I've got a lot of mineral spirits in here, and I'm just putting the base down. It's this bright yellow-orange color. I've got a little bit of yellow ochre. I've got some titanium white, and we're going to make those a bit redder down there. Just and what I'm doing here is I'm going to layer this on as much as I can, because fire is a new one for me. So I'm sort of looking at my reference photo, and I'll come back and detail these logs out a little bit. And I'm just going to sort of touch the edges of it with this little bit of orange that I've mixed up using my alizarin crimson and lemon yellow. You can just see I'm just trying to stay sort of wild. I've got my brush here that's, let's see if we can focus in on that. There we go. It's just a short, squat little brush. It's not a liner. I might get the liner. I'll probably get the liner out here in a minute, but I'm liking the little spread that I'm getting with this guy. So we're just going to blend that down in, and just like this. Fire's just cooling a bit on the edges, and that's getting the yellow white down to a darker orange color. Put a bit more in there, and if I think I went overboard, I just blend it in. You see, I just pushed that down into the painting there. And little bits of, not too much, but little sparks flying, right? And little bits of color on these logs. As they burn, you get those white coals. Just kind of winging it here. A bit more of the crimson. And just push that kind of down here so it looks like I got my bed of coals. I'll mess with this a little bit, but this is my first try with fire, so you know, you work with it and see what you like and see what you don't like. I like a little bit more yellow in there, not too strong of the red. So I'm going to just tap on a bit more of the yellow. You see, we just kind of, oh my goodness, I just kind of erased it out there. But little bits here and there. Everything's got this kind of orange tint to it because our firelight gets reflected against everything. Here, just to show just the edge of that. I'm going to put the rest down in here. Remember, this is just our base. This is what I want my base color of this river to be. I want that reflected light from the sky. Get a bit darker here. Ripples in there. We'll get there when we get there. Okay, you can see what I did here with the water. Just lots of different colors of that sky reflected and moved, and it's a turbulent, kind of river a little bit, so we're not really worried about that. You can see this gravel in the background here. Didn't really take a whole lot of details, just that fan brush, spread out. And I think we have our finished painting. Not sure if it's got a title or anything, but I like the way that turned out. So hopefully this will go in the craft show in Shipshewana in October, and we'll get that sealed up and it'll be ready to go and sell. Hopefully somebody likes this one, takes it home, puts it on their wall. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing and joining along with me. Make sure you keep watching for more painting content. Hopefully I can get some more going here pretty quick. And as always, keep on pushing paint around.